You're on record.
Okay. The meeting of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills Planning Board for Monday, May 20th, 2024 at 7:30 p.m. Announcement is made that adequate notice of this meeting has been given and that it is being conducted in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 et sec of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Nora, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Didich.
Here.
Mr. DePiero.
Here.
Mr. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Math.
Present.
Chairman Dinsmore.
Here.
We also have our board planner, Ms. Winter, our board engineer, Mr. Canjiano, and our board attorney, Ms. Steinle.
All right, if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. This meeting is open to the general public. Is there anyone here that wishes to address the board on an item that is not on our current docket? Hearing and seeing none. We have some resolutions in our packet, and I'd like to have our clerk back from her phone call before we start doing that, but let's go through who we got here. We have the Floor and Decor resolution, and we have the Onyx Equity Hilton Court resolutions, and I think we have sufficient people to do. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the 23-535 Floor and Decor?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second, Math.
All right. Nora, would you call the roll, please?
DePiero.
Yes.
Math.
Yes.
Dinsmore.
Yes. All right. Number 23-530 Onyx Equities. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dadich.
I make the motion for resolution to approve application number 23:530 Onyx Equities, 2 Hilton Court, Block 202, Lot 3.10, amended preliminary and final major site plan, major soil moving permit to construct a warehouse facility.
Mr. Math, are you willing to second this?
I will second.
Nora, would you call the roll,
Didich.
please?
Yes.
Math.
Yes.
Dinsmore.
Yes. All right. We move on to the one item on our agenda tonight. Application number 24:506, 20-30 Lanadex Urban Renewal, LLC, 20-30 Lanadex West, Block 226, lots 3 and 3.2. Mr. Inglesino, you see we only have 5 on our board tonight, and I have been informed that it's likely to take a while, so that we may find ourselves hearing this over multiple nights.
Let's see where we go, Mr. Chairman.
You're going to move forward.
All right, well, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the professionals, and the public. Again, my name is John Inglesino. I'm a partner with the law firm of Inglesino & Taylor. Proud business owners for the past 15 years here in Parsippany. We're representing the applicant, 20-30 Lanadex Urban Renewal, LLC. The applicant is also the owner of the subject site, is seeking preliminary and major final site plan approval regarding the property currently designated as lots 3 and 3.2 in block 226, also known as 20-30 Lanadex Plaza West, here in the township of Parsippany-Troy Hills. The zoning for the property is set forth in the 20-30 Lanadex Plaza West redevelopment plan. As you know, this building has been vacant for a couple of years. It has no future utility for office. Last year, the Township Council unanimously declared the area to be in need of redevelopment and unanimously adopted a redevelopment plan permitting this project. The project consists of the removal of the existing vacant 3-story office building and surface parking areas on the site. The applicant is proposing a warehousing facility totaling a little over 140,000 square feet. It will be approximately 45 feet high with 5,000 square feet of office, 23 loading docks, 2 drive-in ramps, 1 trash compactor bay, along with 81 compliant 81 surface parking spaces, including ADA compliant and EV-ready made spaces. Driveway and parking improvements are also proposed. The applicant is proposing additional site improvements, including detention basins, signage, screening, landscaping, and the like. You will hear testimony tonight indicating that this project will result in an improved environmental condition of the property that will not only benefit this site, but it will benefit sites to the south of this property, including Lake Parsippany. You'll hear that testimony from our engineer. As the board knows, Parsippany Road is a county road. The board doesn't have jurisdiction over county road. Nevertheless, we have provided traffic report, and you'll hear traffic testimony for the board and public information. And we have applied to the Morris County Planning Board for approval. You'll also hear testimony regarding sort of a reconfiguration of the warehouse facility itself as we proceed. Now, the applicant is seeking some deviations and design waivers, which will be set forth by the engineer. You'll hear those in a moment. I want to point out to the board that the Parsippany-Troy Funeral Home, which of course is owned and operated by the DiMaggio family for decades, is located on a parcel adjacent to the applicant's property, Lot 4, Block 226. And a portion of the Parsippany's rear side parking lot, actually a pretty significant portion, encroaches upon the applicant's property. This was raised as a comment in one of the review letters. But the DiMaggios and the applicant's predecessor entitled entered into an encroachment agreement dated October 31, 1986, and recorded in the Morris County Clerk's Office on November 24, 1986, instrument number 129017, whereby a portion of the Parsippany parking area is permitted to exist on the applicant's property. The applicant is not proposing...
We're having an indication that people in the back can't hear.
Oh.
None of the microphones work.
No, I can hear that microphone works. Is it? Nora, is
Just
it
might not be close enough.
Can't hear.
I don't know if this works.
on the back rows? I can hear it.
That's a lot better.
Okay.
Let me go back to the point about the funeral home, because I know there's some folks in the back that have an interest in that. I want to point out to the board and the public that the Parsippany-Troy Funeral Home, which is owned and operated by the DiMaggio family for decades, is located on a parcel adjacent to the applicant's property, which is Lot 4, Block 226. A portion of the funeral home rear and side parking lot encroaches upon the applicant's property. Now, the DiMaggios and the applicant's predecessor entitled entered into an encroachment agreement dated October 31, 1986, and recorded in the Morris County Clerk's Office on November 24, 1986, instrument number 129017, whereby a portion of the Parsippany-Troy parking area, funeral home parking area, is permitted to exist on the applicant's property. I want to enter that encroachment agreement into the record as Exhibit A1. This was an issue that was raised by your engineer. We are not going to disturb the parking lot for the Parsippany-Troy Funeral Home. I want the board to understand that. I want the DiMaggio family to understand that. There's going to be no disturbance of that whatsoever. So if I can mark this, if it's okay, and enter that into the record. And Nora, I'll do that to you in just a moment, okay? I also want to point out to the board that the two lots which make up the subject property have never been merged. This issue was also set forth in the board engineer's review letter dated May 13th, 2024, and the tax assessor's report of March 14, 2024, amended May 16, 2024. And the applicant will agree as a condition of approval to prepare a deed of consolidation for lots 3 and 3.2, subject to review and approval by the board attorney. And per the tax assessor's letter, the new lot would be lot 3.03, and the address would be 8 Lanadex Plaza. That would be a new address for this property. As the board is aware, the board engineer requested comment in his May 14th report regarding status of approval from the Highlands Council. The applicant met with representatives of the Highlands Council months before this application was filed. I was there at the meetings. The meeting was productive. The applicant has submitted its Highlands referral ordinance application to the Highlands as required. We're advised that that is still under review, but we expect that that will be processed, and I expect it will receive a no interest letter or whatever the equivalent of that is. Now, based upon some of the public interest that was evident at the redevelopment plan phase of this process, the applicant and its professionals met with some of the adjoining neighbors, including representatives of the Parsippany Board of Education. We also met with the DiMaggios and the Petersons. First of all, we appreciated all of their time, and we appreciated their thoughtful input. We hope and we believe that we address their concerns as best as we can. The applicant certainly wants to address all reasonable concerns of the public, while at the same time repurposing this vacant building in accordance with the redevelopment plan and getting it back on the tax rolls in a productive way for all of Parsippany's taxpayers. So I don't want to speak for them, but I think, the Board of Education certainly received a detailed briefing on the exact plans that you're going to be seeing here tonight. And they seemed very appreciative and satisfied with the presentation that was made. Our primary responsibility tonight, obviously, as in any application, is to show compliance with the underlying zoning, in this case, the redevelopment plan, and of course, the board's role is to ensure that we do that. We've received several review letters. I just want to reference them for the record. ARH Associates review letter dated April 24, 2024. The GPI Engineering review letter dated May 13, 2024. We have the Township Sewer Department memorandum dated March 26, 2024. We have Morris County Planning Board memorandum dated April 16th of 2024. We have the tax assessor memo, which I just referenced, dated March 14th, 2024, and amended May 16th of 2024. And we have the Township Water Department memorandum dated May 16, 2024. We certainly appreciated advanced review and receipt of those foregoing reports. And in an effort to be efficient, the applicant's witnesses will endeavor to include issues raised in those reports into their affirmative testimony. Each of our witnesses will, of course, be available to the board professionals and public for questions based on their testimony. One other comment that I made, which I want to make sure was heard, and that is that the redevelopment of this site, you'll hear testimony that the redevelopment of this site will result in an improved environmental condition of the property that will not only benefit this site, but also sites to the south of the property, including Lake Parsippany. And you'll hear that testimony momentarily. Mr. Chairman, I have 4 witnesses. See how far we get. We have Dan Miola of Langen Engineering Environmental Services, who will be offered as both the project civil engineer and project landscape architect. We have Ben Miller, the project sound expert. We have Dan DeSario of Langen, who's our traffic engineer. We have Kyle Ferrier of Arco Design Build, who is the project architect. And we have Rachel Fifield of Langen Engineering, the applicant's planner. So if it's the board's pleasure, I'd like to proceed with our first witness.
Do you want to do waivers first?
Yeah, I guess that's...
I had one comment. Did you receive the construction report dated May 17th, 2024? That was part of our file.
I did not. Or if I did, I don't recall
You
getting
don't
it.
have that one? Okay.
Sent over.
It was probably sent, believe me, if I don't have it, it's my fault, it's not yours.
Okay. And then, could you forward the April 16th, 24 Morris County Planning Board letter? I don't think we have that.
I will do that.
All right, we have some waivers to go through, just a few.
Just a couple today. The first one's for the floor plans, which have been submitted, but they exceed the 8 feet per inch scale. We have no objection to that waiver. For existing and proposed signs, we'd just like to hear some testimony that future signage would comply with the redevelopment plan. Also, waiver from the environmental assessment study, as the proposed improvements are located within the previously developed area. We don't object to that. And final one is a combined preliminary and final approval is requested. Separate sheets are to be submitted. We don't have an issue with that waiver.
I think on the signage,
I think on the signage, the intent is to comply with the plan or your underlying ordinance, and we understand that, if we don't, then we'd have to come back to the board.
All right, any questions about the waivers? Is there a motion to approve the waivers in the ARH report of 424?
Motion, Meth.
Second, Dedich.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, sir.
all right, Mr. Chairman,
At this time, I'd like to call up Mr. Dan Miola. Langen. His microphone is working. And Mr. Miola, I guess you should swear in.
You raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record.
Daniel Miola, Miola, Langen Engineering, 300 Kimball Drive, Parsippany, New Jersey, 07054.
And, Mr. Miola, I know you've been before this board before, correct?
Yes, I have.
But just for the benefit of the public, and the board, can you just briefly describe your professional background, your educational background, and, any licenses that you hold?
Sure. Licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. My license is in good standing. I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Villanova University, a master's degree also in civil engineering from Stevens Institute of Technology, and I've been accepted by multiple boards throughout the state, including this one.
As, for civil engineering and for landscaping?
No, I'm not a registered landscape architect, but I can speak to it, the design that was put forth on the application today.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, we would ask that you accept Mr. Miola as an expert in the area of civil engineering, and he'll be describing the landscaping plan.
All right, any questions on the qualifications? Hearing and seeing none. Counselor?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miola. Please describe the civil engineering aspects of the project for the board.
Yes, thank you. Just to provide a brief outline for my testimony this evening, I'm going to start by describing the site location. Then I'm going to get into the site plan that's proposed. After explaining some of the vital statistics, the major components of the site plan, I'm going to go into the site orientation. I know there are questions as to why the loading dock part of the building is located on the western East Lake School side of the site. So I intend on addressing that right after I address the major components of the site plan. Then I'm going to describe the landscaping and buffers surrounding the site, and then stormwater management, and some utility and landscaping testimony to close. So with that, I'll start by speaking to my first exhibit, which is exhibit depicting an aerial of the site. It is...
why don't we mark that as A2?
Sure.
We mark that as A2.
A2?
Yes.
A2 just shows an aerial of the existing site. The property address is 20-30 Landadex Plaza West, which is located at the southwestern corner of the intersection of Parsippany Road. True north is pointing to the left, so when I refer to the east side of the site, it's actually the planned top side. And the south is to the right, and the west is to the bottom.
And the date of this exhibit, is it today's date?
It's dated May 17th, 2024.
Thank you.
So just to explain the properties surrounding the site, to the east is Parsippany Road. To the north is Governor Livingston Park. To the west, East Lake Elementary School. And to the south, we have the Parsippany-Troy Funeral Home, as well as some other residential properties that front on Allentown Road. The property is, as indicated by our attorney, Mr. Inglesino, in the Landadex Plaza West redevelopment plan area. It's about 10.5 acres, currently occupied by about a 60,000 square foot, 3-story office building and associated parking and utilities. Next, I'm going to describe the proposed site. In order to do that, I'm going to refer to this site plan rendering on the right side that I'm going to label A-3. And that is just a plan rendering of the site plan that's proposed for this application. First, the building is
I'm sorry. This is prepared by your office and dated, what is
this
today's date?
is dated 20 May of 2024.
Thank you.
The warehouse footprint is proposed to be approximately 140,000 square feet, 5,000 of which is proposed to be office space, and the balance, about 135,000 square feet, is proposed to be warehouse space. In addition, there are 81 total parking spaces proposed, 4 of which will be ADA accessible. That is proposed on the east side of the property, the part of the property that fronts Parsippany Road. On the west side of the property, there are 20 loading dock positions, as well as 2 drive-in doors and a compactor. There are multiple stormwater management basins that are indicated in the dark green color on this exhibit, including 2 on the west side of the site, which is the low part of the property, and 1 above-ground bioretention basin on the north side of the site along Landadex Plaza Road. It should be noted that Landadex Plaza Road is a private road and is technically part of this property. Just a couple comments on the sidewalk that's proposed. A sidewalk is proposed along the front of the building, the part of the building that faces Parsippany Road, where the car parking is proposed. That sidewalk is then proposed to extend north to Landadex Plaza, and then turn to the east and ultimately connect to the sidewalk system that exists at the Landadex Plaza Parsippany Road intersection. The redevelopment plan does require a sidewalk along the frontages of the site, both for Parsippany Road as well as Landadex Plaza Drive. That is not proposed in our plan, mainly because the adjacent sites to the east and the west of the site, or to the south of the site, there's no sidewalk across those properties, and therefore this additional sidewalk would not connect to any other existing sidewalk. So we felt it was better to bring it to the intersection where there is a developed pedestrian network. In specific, Parsippany Road does have a sidewalk on the east side of it. And so by connecting to that intersection system, we'll be able to bring the pedestrians to the east side of Parsippany Road. But that is one of the deviations that was brought up or that's proposed. In addition, we are proposing a 24-foot access drive around the site. That drive does increase to 30 feet for the aisle or the driveway that accesses the truck court on the west side of the property. That 30 feet is a deviation, another deviation required for the project that allows for a maximum of 24 feet of driveway width. We need the extra 30 feet, or the extra 6 feet, to get to a total of 30 feet, because 30 feet is the standard road width for an internal truck driveway. And so for that reason, we're proposing that deviation. One last deviation I'd like to cover is with respect to the building setback off Parsippany Road, which is required to be 100 feet. And 100 feet is provided for the north side of the frontage. For the south side of the frontage, due to a curve or a bow in the right-of-way line of Parsippany Road, that 100 feet gets reduced to a maximum of 90 feet. And so that setback deviation is also required in connection with the layout. So next, I'd like to address the site's orientation with the car parking along Parsippany Road and the loading dock area on the west side of the property. The real intent of that, the real reason for that, was to work with the grades across this site. This site has a significant grade change as you work your way from Parsippany Road, which is high, to the west, which is low. That grade change is about 35 to 40 feet. When you lay out a warehouse site, you have a few elevations that you really need to respect. The main one being the elevation of the truck court. The loading dock doors, the external grade at those doors need to be 4 feet lower so that the bed of the truck can unload directly onto the slab. And so that's why you see the dock doors are always elevated about 4 feet above the grade. And so the way to lay out warehouse sites such as this one is to really orient the truck court on the low side of the property. We looked at, for this site, orienting the loading docks along Parsippany Road and essentially flipping this building layout. And what we found is due to the high elevations at Old Parsippany Road and Parsippany Road and Lanadex Plaza, you could only ramp down so far before you had to set the grade of your floor. And so we ended up with a floor grade of 8 feet higher than what we have here, which would have required a significant amount of additional fill import on the order of 100,000 additional yards of material. In addition to that, because this gets flipped, the building itself is now 8 feet higher and is significantly closer to the school. And so while this building, which is approximately 45 feet high, would be on the order of 100 feet closer to the school. So we'd need a lot more fill. The building would be about 8 feet higher, and it would be about 100 feet closer to the school. So once we assessed that, we spun the building around and looked at the configuration that we ended up proposing as part of the application. And what I'm going to get into is with the retaining walls proposed along the western side of the property, the school side of the property, as well as an acoustic barrier, we think that this is a much better layout for our neighbor, the East Lake Elementary School. And so now I'll explain some of the components of that buffer. The buffer itself is 60 feet wide, about half of which is several rows of landscaping. We have in this 30 feet of landscaping, multiple rows of evergreen trees, shade trees, and evergreen shrubs. After the proposed landscaping, because this is the low side of the site, we need stormwater management. And so you'll see these darker green areas are bioretention basins, which are going to provide both water quantity and water quality management. These basins, because we needed to get a certain volume of stormwater detention or storage, the west side of this basin has a 4-foot high retaining wall, and then the east side of this basin has about a 15-foot high retaining wall. Again, to transition grade, given the 35-foot grade change across the property, there are significant retaining walls along this western and eastern parts of the property. That's really the only way to grade a flat site when you have such a significant grade change is to have these retaining walls to support a flat pad or development pad. After the 15-foot high retaining wall, we have another 15-foot high acoustic barrier or sound wall. These walls themselves require variances, or I'm sorry, deviations, given they exceed 6 feet in height. The ordinance allows for a maximum of 6-foot retaining wall height in the side and rear yards, as well as a maximum of 4 feet high in the front yard. And we are 15 feet, really goes up to 16 feet in the side and rear yards. And in the front yard, we also have an 8-foot high wall along Parsippany Road. The walls themselves, the retaining walls, will be a modular block wall, which I'm going to show you on my next exhibit, which I'll mark as, are we up to A4? A4 is an exhibit that depicts the walls. The retaining walls are going to be this Versalock or modular block style wall, which are shown in the photos at the bottom half of the rendering. The acoustic barrier or the sound wall will be an eco-stone style wall. That is depicted in the 2 photos at the top of this rendering.
And what is the date of that exhibit?
That is dated May 20th, 2024.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to speak to this next exhibit, which shows what these walls provide when you look at the sight line of this building from the school. I'm going to mark this A5. This is called Section View, and it's dated May 14th, 2024. We took 2 sight line sections from the Eastlake Elementary School, both of which show on this profile, Section BB, as well as this profile, Section CC. So at eye level, which is about 5.5 feet above grade, starting there at the school, again, after assuming you can see through the existing vegetation as well as the proposed vegetation, you can see our retaining wall at the basin, as well as the acoustic barrier on top of that wall, which is, as you can see from the photo, a solid wall. You won't be able to see through it. Your line of sight is such that you will not be able to see this building where the loading docks are proposed. Now, the building does bump back in at the corners, and And my guess is you'll be able to see maybe the top little bit of that peeking out over the wall. But for the middle portion of this side of the building, which is where all the docks are proposed, where the trucking is proposed, you won't be able to see any of the trucking because those are only 14 feet high, and you really won't be able to see the middle portion of this building, even though it's about 50 feet high, I guess is our proposed height. So we do believe that this is a better design than if we were to rotate this building, push it closer to the school, and have to prop it up higher. We think that that would be, not only are you bucking grade, but you're proposing a pretty large building pretty close to the school lot line. And again, we think with the buffering as well as the proposed acoustic barrier providing us both a noise attenuation as well as a visual screen, that this is a better design for our neighbor as well as for us.
And if I may, Mr. Cote was there. We had a meeting with the Board of Education on this exact design, showed him these exact plans. I don't recall the exact date, but it was a couple of months ago. We met with the board president, many representatives of the administration for about 2.5 hours or so, and went through this in detail with Mr. Cote and with Mr. Mueller, who you're going to hear from in a moment. And they expressed support for what was being proposed in the first instance, not just as an alternative, but they expressed support for it. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that. Mr. Cote unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but I wanted to make that representation to the board.
Thank you. Next, I'll go into some other components of the site plan. We did perform several truck turns and maneuvering plans to depict how an emergency vehicle would access the site and confirm that it can. The driveways are adequately sized to accommodate those maneuvers, as well as the maneuvers of the tractor trailers that are proposed to access the building. There is a comment from the board engineering regarding the accessibility of Parsippany Road, Lanedex Plaza intersection for a tractor trailer, and we do believe with a slight curb modification that we can accommodate that truck turn as well. With respect to stormwater management, we do have a robust design. Not only the 3 bioretention basins that are shown in dark green on this exhibit, which are above ground basins providing both quantity and quality management. We also have an underground system below the truck court that consists of 36-inch pipe, four rows of them, each row being 150 feet long. And in addition to that, we have 2 porous pavement systems in the car parking lot. The porous pavement systems in the car parking lot and the underground infiltration system are also designed to provide quantity, quality, and groundwater recharge for this site. I will add that the existing site, the existing office and its associated parking lot, does have a basin, one basin along the western side of the property, but that was all from what I could tell, and I could not see any additional stormwater management, whether it's additional quantity, additional quality measures, or groundwater recharge measures. And I'll add that the state recently changed their stormwater management regulations to become much more stringent, both looking at current rainfall data as well as projected rainfall data from the year 2100. And our stormwater facilities are sized for that larger storm event that's projected in the year 2100. So we're fully complying with both state and local regulations with respect to the stormwater design. In addition, just a few comments on utilities. We are a developed office site, so the site does have power, gas, electric, and water. Water, however, the pressure based on the hydrant flow test we received from the Public Works Department is not adequate for a fire suppression design of these modern warehouses. And so we will need to supplement the volume of water required for this warehouse with a water tank. That water tank has not been shown on our plans, as this hydrant flow test data became available to us basically today. But based on our sprinkler subcontractor's review, that existing flow and pressure at the street is not going to be adequate, so we're going to need to supplement it with a water tank and associated pump house. The water tank will be approximately 30 feet in diameter, and the pump house will be about 20 feet by 20 feet in size, and we are expecting that will be proposed off the northeast corner of the building in this landscaped area. And so we would show that and the engineering for that as part of a subsequent submittal as part of probably resolution compliance if this project were to be approved. Landscaping, I explained how we were treating the buffer in the west. All the landscaping proposed is indicated on this aerial and the site rendering on Exhibit A3. That includes really focusing the landscaping along the buffers of the property, both the west side that faces East Lake School and the east side that faces Parsippany Road. We also have buffer plantings surrounding the building as well as the southern part of the site. In total, 147 trees are proposed, again, most of which are focused along the buffers. We do require one variance from one deviation from the redevelopment plan that requires one tree within the parking lot for each 25 parking spaces. Given we have 81, that equals 4 trees, and we only have one tree proposed. So that's a requested deviation. We focused instead the landscaping really in the buffer of Parsippany Road. I suppose we could probably add one at the end caps of the parking rows, but again, the intent of this landscaping design was really to focus along the street frontage part of the site. In terms of lighting, we're proposing both pole and wall-mounted fixtures. 25 feet is our fixture mounting height. Some of those pole-mounted fixtures will have backlight control to address glare requirements of the redevelopment plan and of the ordinance. And so just a couple other comments regarding outside agencies. We have, I believe, approval from Morris County with conditions that we will agree to address. We do not have soil conservation approval, but will obtain that as a condition of approval, as well as the Parsippany-Troy Hills local water and sewer permits. And as our attorney, Mr. Inglesino, mentioned, we are pursuing a letter of no interest from the Highlands Commission. From a DEP perspective, we have an LOI application pending that confirms the location of the wetlands. There is a wetland on the south side of the site in the forested area that's being left undisturbed, as well as another small pocket wetland that is actually located on the school's property, the buffer of which extends onto our property. And so we do expect to obtain that LOI in the coming weeks. I'm also in receipt of board engineer and board planning letters and can agree to accommodate those comments after the hearing.
So,
The Morris County Planning Board has sent a letter dated April 16 of 2024. This has some of my notes on it. I apologize, Nora, I didn't realize you didn't have it, but I'll forward it to you after tonight's meeting. Does not indicate that there is approval, but it indicates that the county planning board was looking for some requirements. I'd like to go through those with you.
Sure.
First of all, curbing, full height curb to be extended along the entire frontage of Parsippany Road. Again, Parsippany Road is a county road, is that correct?
That's correct, and we are
And-
willing to.
And that's something the
provide that curb.
applicant's going to do, right?
Yes,
And we're going to show the concrete curb detail, correct?
yes,
And the county planning board is looking for the applicant to install a guardrail along Parsippany Road frontage in the areas of the proposed on-site retaining wall. Can you point that out to the board where that is?
yes. The on-site retaining wall is along these row of parking spaces to the east of the parking spaces. And so we will be providing fall protection for all retaining walls in the form of a fence, as well as a guide rail along Parsippany Road in accordance with that county comment.
There are a couple other typos here, but I want to just make sure I hit all of the substantive comments. I think that was it in terms of substantive comments from the board, so we'll comply with those. The rest are a couple of typos and things of that nature. Can you just elaborate a little more on stormwater and specifically how this property will be improved from an environmental standpoint under its current condition? How the
Sure.
proposed condition will result in an improved environmental condition, and what that means, especially with regard to Lake Parsippany. Lake Parsippany is south of this property, and I think we want to understand what impact this property has on Lake Parsippany today, and what that impact will be after this project is designed.
Sure. So, when you look at stormwater quality, roof runoff is considered clean. There's no hydrocarbons from the tires. There's no grit or sediment or debris. And so roof runoff, in accordance with the rules, doesn't need to be treated. But pavement runoff is what the state and local requirements require that we provide stormwater management for in the form of water quality, what they call treatment or total suspended solids removal. And so that's grit and sand and, you know.
Well, but today you're saying that in the current condition, you have a parking lot.
So we have a whole lot of asphalt out there today with a smallish building, but hundreds of car parking spaces, aisles, driveways, and no water quantity or water quality management. When we looked at this site plan, we are providing 1, 2, 3 above-ground basins, 1 below-ground infiltration basin, and 2 pervious pavement systems, all of which will provide that total suspended solids treatment for water quality. So every single stormwater management facility that's proposed here is proposed in accordance with the New Jersey rules to provide that water quality management and treatment of the runoff before it's discharged off the site.
And right now, that's not the case.
Correct.
And this is how the redevelopment of sites can actually provide environmental benefit, correct?
Yes, this is a large improvement in terms of stormwater quality than what exists on the site today, and will be a benefit really to the overall watershed that includes Lake Parsippany.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions of Mr. Miola. I don't know whether you want to go through the engineer's comments real quick. I mean, we've been through them internally. We can do that, or?
You agree to make, particularly with the stormwater management and the soil testing, the comments that for the plan changes we requested, that's a condition of approval. You agree to make those changes?
Yes, sir.
I have a few questions, but I just wanted to get it on the record that they'll address the comments that we have in the letter.
Okay.
But just as far as questions, mostly on the walls, and before that, but thank you for the acknowledgement. You will make some adjustments to the curb line at Parsippany Road. Is that what I heard?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. And then that is a county road, and you'll coordinate with Morris County for those
Yes.
those curb adjustments. Okay. Walls. I got a few questions on the walls. Obviously, there's tons of walls on this site. I did notice, and you may have covered it in testimony. If I missed it, I apologize. The wall height, approximately 15 feet in the front yard. I noticed that the grading, the parking lot was sloped away from the building to the east and not to the west. Any consideration on regrading that parking lot? You'll probably pick up a couple feet of grade and lessening that wall height.
So we will agree to look into that. And you're right, we thought by, after looking at your comment and looking at the plan, that you could save 1 or 2 feet off the wall height. So we can look into that.
Also, again, this is more of a detailing thing. You may need to adjust the type of wall you're proposing. This is my comment 16 about the walls near the existing funeral parlors, existing parking there.
So that is a cut wall, and you are right, there's not a lot of room for geogrid behind that wall, and so we're going to have to do a different wall design than a typical modular block that has a geogrid reinforcement.
Okay.
And so that will be, have to be designed by a structural engineer and submitted as part of a building permit.
Right, and we don't need the structural accounts at the planning board. That's part of the building department review. But I ask that you update that just to give to show generically what the other type of wall you're using. It's not a geogrid wall.
Understood.
So okay, and then the guide rail comments at the top of the walls. You commented on that, at least in the county right away, but also at the other locations. And I think that was it on the wall. And of forest landscaping, I think it was comment 25. You'll probably be disturbing the trees in the Parsippany Road right away, at least the root structure, with the excavation of the walls. We asked, it's in the letter, that you coordinate with the township forester for any tree replacement in the right of way. That if those tree roots do get compromised, which they likely will, have the discussion with the forester on those trees.
Yes, we can comply with that comment. We'll do that.
And did you cover this, the basin to the north, is that considered a dam? You need a permit for that one?
That would be a class 4 dam, so technically a permit by rule, but it would need to be designed with the required spillway in accordance with the dam safety provisions that erosion control usually looks at when we submit to them. So
Okay.
We will
So
include
again,
those.
just make those notes or changes on the plan for your resubmission.
Yes, understood.
That was most of my major comments.
Christine, did you have any questions of this?
You addressed most of the comments in my letter, so thank you. As far as the water tank goes, where were you thinking of putting that?
Really, our water connection and hot box is really located in this landscape area to the east of the car parking lot driveway.
Okay.
And so there's a significant room there to accommodate this tank and an accessory pump house.
Do you think you can get 40 feet from the property line there? Because that's the requirement for an accessory structure. So might need to figure that out
Okay.
prior to an approval.
I guess if we need a variance or a deviation, we'll have to come back for that. This is news that I received this afternoon. There are other potential locations for it further inboard of the site. If we can avoid that deviation, we probably will try to locate it with that setback in mind.
Okay. What are the typical height of a water tank?
It won't be any higher than the building, but in my experience, they've been 30, 35 feet high.
I think that's it right now.
Members of the board have any questions on this testimony? Mr. Meth?
I have a couple, but if someone else wants to go first.
I don't see any other volunteers.
Okay, this one might be for Christine and Andrew. I understand the walls are up to 17 feet high, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, don't we have a provision that you're supposed to terrace walls if they're more than 6 feet high?
Yes, I mean, he's asking for the deviation.
Okay, understood. All right, so basically, I just wanted to double check that applies to the redevelopment zone.
I doesn't think.
We didn't leave it out. We didn't exclude it in the redevelopment zone, did we?
I don't believe so, but I will double check.
Okay. So, is there any technical way, is it technically feasible to terrace any of the walls, Mr. Miola?
Not with this site plan. As I explained, given that grade change across the property, with the way we need to really flatten a development pad to accommodate all that grade change, with this site plan that has been engineered, these walls cannot be terraced. There's not the horizontal room to do that.
Okay. All right. Now, getting to the sidewalk. You indicated that you're not providing sidewalk, despite the fact it's in the redevelopment plan. Is it technically infeasible to put sidewalk along Parsippany Road?
If I may just push back on that a little bit. The redevelopment plan on that point, which is actually section 8.2, says that Parsippany Road is a county road under the jurisdiction of Morris County, subject to county approvals if and where required. Sidewalks are mandatory along Parsippany Road. So when you read the redevelopment plan, it punts to the county and says that if sidewalk, we're looking at it as a deviation. We want to be respectful. This is a county road. It's a county road network, and my reading of the redevelopment plan there is that it defers to the county. It says that if the county says so, then it's mandatory.
Okay, my understanding is Morris County defers sidewalks to the municipalities, meaning it's not a county issue of a sidewalk. My understanding is the county act, and I'm not a legal expert, only applies in the roadway, not the sides. So that Morris County requires, if there's a sidewalk, that the municipality take ownership of that.
I'm just reading from the redevelopment plan. It says Parsippany Road is a county road under the jurisdiction of Morris County. It says, subject to county approvals, if and where required, county approvals, sidewalks are mandatory. So we did receive the letter from Morris County. There's no reference, there's no desire expressed by Morris County for sidewalks on this side of Parsippany Road. I mean, there is a sidewalk obviously on the other side of Parsippany Road, and there's a road, a pedestrian network and crossing to do that. Mr. Miller, can you discuss some of the practical issues with this sidewalk potentially to nowhere, particularly as it may impact Parsippany Funeral Home? Because it starts to get a little dicey once you start to go down Parsippany Road. Even if you were, in the future to think about extending sidewalks, that's going to impact some properties, including the funeral home. And it just, when we looked at it, it really was the classic sidewalk to nowhere. Can you just discuss that a little bit?
Yes, as you indicated, the funeral home does not have sidewalk across its frontage, and across its frontage, it does have two fairly large width driveways with this center island. So while I think the practical challenge here is you're you're inviting folks to walk to that point where the funeral home property starts, but then there's no continuing sidewalk. Whereas on the east side of Parsippany Road, there's a nice sidewalk system, crosswalks across each driveway that goes to Allentown Road, and that signal and intersection there. So really practically, like you had indicated, it's a sidewalk to nowhere, and it's also just inviting pedestrians to a point where, the sidewalk's gonna end.
The sidewalk to nowhere comment, if we keep following that, we will never have sidewalks. You have to start somewhere. And every time we say, okay, we're not gonna build it because there's nothing on either end. Well, something develops there, well, they're not gonna build it because there's nothing on the other end. And it goes on forever. And eventually, the township has to pay for building sidewalks because the sidewalk to nowhere keeps winning every time it comes before the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Board. That's an issue
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. But here again, there is a sidewalk network right on the other side of the street. And given, I think we all know the Parsippany-Troy Funeral Home, if you were to, I don't know how you would put sidewalks there.
Now, if you continue north, you're walking over the bridge. If you continue south, you're walking towards the funeral home and an animal hospital and gas station, I guess not much else.
Right.
So, in this case, I guess it wouldn't make any difference, but I just don't like that argument all the time.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and I didn't mean to just make that argument in the abstract. The professional team took a look at this, and again, given the fact that there is a sidewalk network on the other side of the street, and given the nature of the businesses,
Okay.
That's where we looked at. We didn't want to be disruptive.
No, I'm not done. Thank you. Well, okay, I've also been to events more than I wish I had to at the Parsippany-Troy Funeral Home. Occasionally, when there's not sufficient parking there, people actually park at Lanadex and walk over. For that reason alone, I think sidewalk is warranted here because it's the safer place to walk along that area. And I do believe that our master plan calls for sidewalk on both sides of Parsippany Road. Yeah, I'm not, I do not believe the fact that one existing property shall we say, being able to facilitate sidewalk is enough to not put sidewalk in. I guess I'll ask you as a professional engineer, Mr. Miola, if there is a pedestrian walking along Parsippany Road on your property side of the road, are they safer on the road or on a sidewalk?
Can you repeat that question? I just want to think about that a little more.
If there happens to be a pedestrian walking on Parsippany Road on the I guess western side of Parsippany Road, the side with your property, would they be safer on the roadway or on a sidewalk?
Well, they're not safer if they're walking in the middle of the road. They're definitely safer if they're walking, where on the high side or off the cartway where there's curbing and landscaping and things like that separate them from vehicular traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
Well, I was gonna wait for the sound engineer, but since you've justified orienting the building that way, I will voice my objections now. We had another warehouse go up in Mazdabrook, and those trucks backing up with the beeping sound all hours of the night when people are trying to sleep is going to affect, I don't care how pretty that wall is that you're building over there, it's going to affect people trying to sleep, and during the day it's going to affect the school. If that building were rotated the way we talked about it, and we talked about this at length on the town council, at length, hours. And if the truck terminals are on Parsippany Road, there would be zero sound to the school and to the residents in East Lake. Zero sound. By orienting it that way, you're gonna get sound down there in the middle of the night with those trucks backing up and beeping. That is, I've done a planning board for 26 years, and my primary goal in 26 years has been to protect the quality of life of the residents. And that plan doesn't do it. And I'll argue with the sound engineer when he gets up there too. I was gonna wait for him, but I just want you to know, you oriented that way, I don't buy the justification. Unfortunately, you weren't there when our town council was talking about this during the redevelopment process.
Mr. Mealy?
Mr. Chairman, in addition to what Mr. DePiero just said, what about diesel fumes emanating from these trucks and going down to the school area? Would you comment on that, please?
Yeah. I'm not an expert on air
Will someone
quality.
be testifying to that?
I don't know, however, we are converting this from several hundred car parking spaces to a building that has 20 loading docks. So I have not done the study on a pre versus post,
I would suggest that that is an issue that should be addressed.
Well, again, this property is zoned for this use. I mean, there's going to be trucks, this number of trucks pulling in and out anyway on the site. We're not asking for any relief in that regard.
Can you give us an estimate as to how many feet those docks are from the eastern part of the school?
yes, they're significantly higher. If you bear with me, I can open the grading plan and tell you by how much. Those loading docks are at elevation 324, and the school's at about 304. So that would be a difference in about 20 feet.
And there's also a grade impacting that as well, is there?
Yes, as well as, the vegetation we're planting, the vegetation that exists on the school side of the lot line there.
Right. Thank you.
Other members of the board have questions? If the guardrail on Parsippany Boulevard, to build that in there, is that something that would make it difficult to put in a sidewalk, or is that irrelevant to the sidewalk?
The guardrail will take up room. There are also street trees that exist along Parsippany Road that would have to be accommodated. So yes, all these things take up room. I haven't looked at it in detail as far as how much room and if you could sneak a sidewalk by it all.
I mean, if we're going to put in a guardrail and we're going to keep some buffering, is there adequate room for a proper sidewalk?
Mr. Chairman, we'll take a look at that. I think that's a good question. We did look at the street trees. There's not a lot of room out there today, candidly, as it exists, with the trees. So, again, we didn't get that comment from the county. We'll take a look at that to see, what can actually be accommodated out there.
And I'm just going to try not to ask you to try to put two objects in the same space at the same time. Unless, of course, it does fit. All right, any other members of the board have any more questions on this? Mr. Didich?
Yeah, I don't have any new question, but I just want to kind of second the two issues that have been raised. One is the sidewalk. We did have another development like that on Sylvan Way, I think. And we were able to get, we discussed that, and we did actually agree to have sidewalk on that property. Even though that appeared like it was going nowhere type of situation, but I think I think to Mr. DePierro's point, we have to start somewhere, and I think sidewalk probably makes sense here. Similarly, I have concerns with the noise pollution coming out of those trucks in and out. So I think we'll wait for the next testimony or whoever, somebody's going to talk more about that, but I do have definitely concerns from that aspect.
All right, very good. All right, no other questions from the board. Christine, do you have a?
In response to Mr. Met's question about the tiering, there's nothing in the redevelopment plan that would exempt them from that, so that would be another deviation.
Okay, thank you.
All right. At this time, we are actually going to open up to the public for questions. Questions only on this testimony at this time, please. There'll be time for statements or opinions later. This is the time to ask questions to get information from this testimony from this individual at this time. Please come forward, identify yourself, and Mr. Inglesino, if you could...
Hi, Julia Peterson, 25 Old Parsippany Road. Can you speak to the buffering on the north side of the property?
Sure. The north side of the property is actually on the other side of Lanedex Plaza West.
Right.
So Lanedex Plaza for this stretch is owned by this applicant, this owner. And so what exists is the roadway itself. There is a buffer on the north side of that road, which consists of, some streetscape trees. And then there's, on our side of Lanedex Plaza Drive, or the south side, a basin with associated landscaping around it, as well as just a landscape buffer that separates the building from the road.
So there's going to be a
People in the
landscape.
back can't hear very well on the, from the microphone.
Sorry. Is there any landscape buffering on this part of the site?
Yes, we have trees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, as well as these smaller symbols which represent shrubs, grasses,
The public
and
is having
perennials.
difficulty seeing where you're pointing and things like that, so
It's my fault.
I'm just trying to think of how we might be able to place these so that there's a bit better.
I can spin the board to the public if...
Fine with me. I know what it looks like.
You know what it looks like, then yes. Make it a little bit more visible to the...
So we're talking about the north side of the property that includes existing Lanedex Plaza Drive as well as this buffer.
Will all of the trees that exist now be cut down?
On the south side of Lanedex Plaza West, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Aside from, what you see here to the
And what impact
south.
do you anticipate on the west side of the mature trees that are along that line?
The west...
Down. East Lake side. There are mature trees
So
on
aside
the East
from,
Lake, yeah.
aside from the trees that are part of the landscape buffer associated with this wetland, which you can see this rendering shows we're keeping, the rest of the vegetation from the lot line on the west side of the property will be removed.
And the wall or the berm is not going to affect the root system of those mature trees that are between that and East Lake? As you would project it. But I'm talking about this set of trees,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
I know that's not necessarily within your purview, but...
Well, we're proposing really a fill slope here. So we're not cutting from the property line, we're filling.
Yeah, you're putting more dirt
So we're
on
putting-
top of those root systems. That's
That's
what I'm trying
correct.
to establish.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right. And where is the location of the pump house at this point?
Well, at this point, I would guess it's going to go probably off the north end of the site where we do have enough room to accommodate this tank and associated pump house.
Okay, now we're talking about Lanedex Plaza Road, which was constructed, well, no. You're aware it was constructed as a driveway?
It being a private road that I would have figured is public, then yes, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
I mean, it didn't, to your knowledge, it didn't receive the treatment that you would normally put on a road that was going to handle trucks.
I would, yes.
And you don't have a plan to rebuild that road to carry the truck traffic?
Yes, we've, that was in a comment letter, and I believe we were willing to mill and pave Lanedex Plaza Drive.
So there was well, all right, repave, not
Yes, We're milling and paving it as well as, which is, grinding down 2 inches and then putting fresh 2 inches of asphalt on top of it. And we were also going to replace the drainage inlet grate and castings.
Okay, now, at the last, you mentioned something about a dam. Where is the dam?
So technically, a dam is classified in New Jersey when the elevation of the top of the embankment of these basins and is 15 feet higher than the elevation of the outfall.
Mm-hmm.
And because of such a great change across this site, where all the runoff ultimately outfalls, which is really an existing storm system already, that elevation distance exceeds the 15 feet, and therefore this dam classification
Considered a dam?
is considered,
Okay,
yes.
thank you very much.
Sure.
Other members of the public? If you could identify yourself and...
Bill Sempier, 157 Allentown Road, Lake Parsippany resident. You spoke about some joint...
I'm sorry, could you state your name and address again?
Sure. Bill Sempier, 157 Allentown Road, Lake Parsippany.
Thank you.
Welcome. You spoke about 3 large, I think, 150-foot-long pipes through here for drainage?
Yes, 3-foot diameter. I think there are 4 rows.
And you talked about the bioretention basins?
That's correct.
Where's all this tying into?
This all ties into an existing manhole.
Which goes into East Lake's parking lot and into Lake Parsippany. You don't need to get the map, I know.
Yes.
Been there, done that. So, questions for you. Will there be fuel stored on the property?
No, that's not proposed.
Okay.
I mean, in the form of a underground or above-ground tank, I assume?
Yes.
No, that's not part of our site plan.
Okay. What if there's a fuel spill from one of the trucks on the parking lot? How are the bioretention basins going to handle that? Because ultimately that's going into Lake Parsippany.
Yes, well, as part of all of these sites' operation controls, they have a spill prevention and spill containment system that they will implement on any spill. And so that would include putting drainage shocks on the inlets, it would hay bales and the like, as well as cleaning up the mess. And so that would be implemented as part of really the operations and maintenance of any site, any new site like
Correct.
this.
Okay. Maybe you're not the guy to ask. The basins, they'll be properly maintained in accordance with the law and blah, 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 and in the event that, if these are not maintained and something happens, I don't know whether you're the right person to ask that question.
So there's what's called a stormwater pollution prevention plan and a stormwater operations and maintenance manual that as part of this development, that manual needs to be recorded with the deed so that not only this owner, but all future owners, when they buy this site, are also buying that document and the responsibilities that come with it. which all speak to the operations and maintenance of the stormwater facilities. So that's another standard requirement that now comes with development sites like this.
Okay. And then you already touched on the noise sound on the road going up too, because that's leaving the complex, and, you know, you're gonna have trucks going up and down the hill, Jake brakes, which is gonna really annoy the lady that you just spoke with, I'm sure. But as far as drainage, you guys have this under control, because we already have enough problems with stuff from the state coming into Lake Parsippany, the township water's coming into Lake Parsippany. So I just want to make sure that as we add to that overburden system, that you're maintaining the new standards.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other members of the public have questions of this witness
you.
of this testimony?
And Mr. Chairman, which we didn't go through in Mr. Canjiano's report, stormwater management report addresses a lot of these items, numbers 31 through 37, and the applicant agrees as conditions of approval to comply with all of those. And there's discussion in here about the stormwater manual, inspections, maintenance records, et cetera. And the applicant will comply with all of those requirements as conditions of approval.
Very good. If you could,
Nick Homiak from 2609 Avenue in Mill Lake, Hiawatha. You said you had a master's in civic engineering.
Civil engineering.
All right, civil.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. Are you familiar with the policy standards for warehousing in the New Jersey Highlands region? At 28 pages, released September the 28th, 2023.
I haven't read that cover to cover, no.
You haven't read it?
No.
Have you are you familiar with the New Jersey State Planning Commission distribution of warehousing and goods movements and guidelines, policies adopted September the 7th, 2022?
So, again, while I'm familiar with these documents, I have not read them cover to cover.
You haven't read them?
No.
So if I asked you if you would think outright that this is an inappropriate location for such a warehouse, would you agree?
Well, the Highlands Commission...
Objection.
Sure.
The location, the decision of the use of a warehouse at this location is not before the board. That was a legislative determination that was made by the governor. To the mic, please. I'm trying to find a microphone that works. This one doesn't work.
All right. The question was regarding the appropriateness of a warehouse use at this site. I'm objecting to the question because the question of whether or not this is an appropriate site for the use of a warehouse is not a question for the planning board. That's a question that was determined legislatively by the governing body, who unanimously approved the redevelopment plan to permit a warehouse here as a permitted use. So that's my objection.
So this would be the fourth warehouse in Parsippany if it's approved?
Again, objection. I don't know, that's irrelevant.
Sir, you have,
Okay, all
sir,
right.
you have to, do you have to tailor your questions to the engineer's testimony that was provided?
Okay, you said you were going to replant 147 trees. Are these native species? Are they invasives? Do you have a list of the trees and the conditions they will be in when they're hopefully restored to a disturbed landscape?
Yes, there's a full landscape design that was performed in connection with the application that includes the species, the heights, the caliper size, etc. And with any project as this one, the landscaping comes with a warranty, so that if if the trees were to die within a certain period of time, they would be replaced at no cost.
You had agreed to work with the town forester on this.
That's correct.
This is not, the town forester is our expert who will go in and make sure that they're appropriate trees.
Yes, of course we will.
Did you supply this, board with a list, questions and answers, a list of your stormwater calculations, groundwater recharge, stormwater runoff? Is there an actual question and answer list that you submitted to this board or a town engineer?
There is what's called a stormwater management report.
No, a question and answer criteria.
So the design requirements, as well as how the design meets those requirements, are all provided in that report. There's no question and answer per se, but the rules are written in there, as well as how the design meets the rules, if that's your question.
Well, there are questions and answers I could provide the board with. I don't have them with me tonight, but I do have such questions and answers that are standard procedures when there's an environmental commission involved. So if you're interested, I could supply you with these questions. And the wall, the noise, what decimal is the barrier rated at to impede the noise? At up to what decibels?
Mr. Homiak, if you can hold that question, that's a question not for this witness. We do have a witness who will be testifying with regard to noise and the sound of the wall, et cetera, and that would be an appropriate question to hold for that witness.
Okay, so my last question would be, right now, Landedec's 20 to 30, is there going to be less impervious surface or more impervious surface after this warehouse?
More impervious surface.
More impervious surface. All right, thank you.
Are there other members of the public who have questions on this witness, on this testimony? Please.
Does the existence of the power line on Parsippany Road impede the sidewalk and the guardrail in any way? Or will that have to be relocated? I mean, the electric line along the edge, the western edge of Parsippany Road.
That would have to be accommodated, as well as the guardrail and the trees in any sidewalk that's proposed.
Thank you.
Any other questions by members of the public? Hearing and seeing none. Counselor?
Well, Nora has proved me wrong again. My office, I've just located the May 17th letter from the Fire Protection Subcode official. Have you reviewed that letter?
Yes, I have.
Can you address the comments that were raised in that letter?
In short, we believe we can satisfy all the comments provided in that letter. Comments are provided regarding the fire department connection location, fire lane signage and striping, as well as the water service design. Again, there's about 4 comments in that letter, all of which we believe we can address.
So we'll satisfy those comments through plan revisions or as part of resolution compliance?
Yes.
Okay. If the board wants to go through any of them any more detail than that, we're happy to, but you have our answer there.
Board happy with that? Yep. All right. You wish to bring forward your next witness, or is there
Sure.
a desire for a break, or?
Nope, Mr. Ben Mueller? You just stand up so you get sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record.
Sure. Benjamin Mueller, Mueller, and my firm is Ostergaard Acoustical Associates, located at 1460 Route 9 North in Woodbridge, New Jersey.
And Mr. Miller, can you provide your educational and professional background for the board and provide any licenses that you hold?
Certainly. I have my undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering from Villanova University. I also have a master's in mechanical engineering with a concentration in noise and vibration control from Stevens Institute. I've been practicing in the field of acoustics for almost 25 years now. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey and Oregon. My license is current. I've also been accepted as an expert all across New Jersey as well as in several surrounding states, and active member of several professional societies.
So we would respectfully offer Mr. Mueller as an expert in acoustical engineering.
Any questions on the qualifications of our acoustical engineer?
Thank you. So, Mr. Mueller, I'm going to ask you in a moment to describe the sound aspects of this as it relates to the project and some of the issues of concern. But you heard me reference before a meeting that we held, a private meeting that we held with representatives of the Board of Education, correct?
Yes.
And, you know, we held that meeting candidly in part because, to former Councilman DePiero's point, we were aware that there was a proposal initially made for the bays to be facing Parsippany Road, and that due to, once you start to do the hard engineering, that changed. And so there was a sensitivity to how that might impact the schools, so we met with the Board of Education. Do you recall that meeting?
Yes, I do.
And what was at the end of that meeting, after your presentation, which you're going to give now, what was your recollection of the reaction from the board president, board administrator, and the numerous other representatives from the board that was there?
The result was favorable, despite the fact that this is different than what was originally conceived. We still are able to satisfy and ameliorate any of the concerns that come with the development of this type, and including noise being one of them.
So, having asked you that, can you please describe the acoustical aspects of the application, describe the wall, how that works, and address some of the comments that were already provided by the board? I'm sure there'll be more comments and questions.
Sure, certainly. So at the beginning of every project that we are involved with, I always have to start where we would consider to be our beginning point. What are our applicable regulations associated with or that help to govern site sound emissions? So here in the state of New Jersey, we have a robust state noise ordinance. It's found under NJAC 7:29. And in that regulation, it discusses site sound emitting from various types of properties and then being received by their counterparts. And so speaking specifically of this being an industrial use, the state code says that our off-site sound emissions are limited to 65 dBA, dB being abbreviation for decibel, and A being the A-weighted decibel. When I say dBA, it's referencing the A-weighted sound level, which is provided in that format because it best represents how our ear hears. That 65 is protective to for daytime levels, is protective because of helping to minimize any interference with speech communication. So if two people were having a conversation about 3 feet apart, no normal vocal effort, that's approximately 65. And so the ordinance is driven to say that if there's some sort of additional noise that's contributing to where these people might be having a conversation, that it isn't as a significant a level to cause interference in that conversation or to have either party forced to raise their voice, right? And that level applies for commercial uses 24 hours a day. And that would be, nearest us would be the funeral home, for example, as well as the school, excuse me. For residential receptors, during the nighttime hours, which start at 10 p.m. till 7 a.m., that level is reduced to 50. Now, that sounds like a 15 difference there, and it is, but because noise is a logarithmic function, that is a significant difference to be sensitive towards sleeping and sleeping conditions that for residences. So with a site like this, we are proposing a 24-hour operation, so there is potential for nighttime activity to occur, and so for residential receptors, the driving project goal is to meet that nighttime noise code limit of 50 dBA. There are also octave bands that associate with those overall levels. Those are designed to make sure that there aren't any egregious tones associated with the site. So the state code covers the overall level, it covers octave band limits, and it also has various other segments to it that have varying degrees of application to the site, but I don't want to get too much into the weeds here. On the local level, we have, let's see, in the Parsippany ordinance is Chapter 258, noise. Now, this ordinance is a form of the state model ordinance that is currently being promoted and offered to municipalities, and it has the same language that the state has in it. So it's become a very nice tool promoted by the state and the DEP to get municipalities to align with it and to be able to help support the enforcement of the state noise code. So we don't have, we have alignment here, so that the codes that we were just discussing regarding the state are also that of the local municipality. With those in place, again, we have a speculative warehouse here. Speculative meaning that we don't have a future tenant. That being the case, that doesn't mean that we don't understand how a warehouse works. You'll hear also after me, traffic. We'll discuss the prospective traffic of the site. And so for a noise analysis, I make use of the same tools that the traffic engineer has at his disposal in order to understand how historical warehouses have operated, how many vehicles are expected in terms of cars and number of trucks. And so we make use of all of that as well to do our noise analysis. So how do we do the noise analysis? Well, there's two parts of it. So the first part is going to be that the warehouses will contribute a steady presence 24 hours a day, and that's associated with their HVAC equipment. A normal warehouse will have heating and conditioning in the office space, which we've heard testimony earlier about the small portion that's going to be dedicated to offices. But for the grand part of it, where it's just goods, dry goods that are being stored, there's really only a circulation of air required and heating. There's no air conditioning associated with that. So what you see for a warehouse is that it really doesn't have too robust of a HVAC system associated with it. But despite that, we go and take a conservative slant, and we're going to assume that the entire facility, both the warehouse and the office space, is going to be conditioned. And that just allows us to continue to promote, while we maybe do not know the specific details of what might be proposed, we can come up with a conservative estimate of what might be. And so what we did is we developed an acoustical model and assumed that there would be 8 25-ton rooftop units distributed evenly across the rooftop. And so let me just touch upon what it is that is this acoustical model before I go into an exhibit. But we take the civil plans that we've heard about, we take in the corresponding grading that's proposed, as well as the surrounding existing grading. I'm interested in where our receptors are located and at what elevations they might be at. And we put together a 3-dimensional acoustical model, taking all those geometries into consideration. And then we look at, well, if we introduce a noise source into a site that currently does not have this, of what will the effects be off-site? And we can then compare those directly to our state and local noise ordinance, as they are only involving site sound that's emitting from our site. We're not looking at and talking about the ambient sound. We know we have I-80 to our north, and we have some well-traveled local roads as well. So the model is going to take into account how sound falls off with distance, which is going to be primarily the big focus or the big pull of noise mitigation that the acoustical model will highlight. But also then we're going to be able to show how we develop the barrier that we're proposing on the west side of the site that's common with the school. All right, I'm going to introduce now Exhibit A5, maybe?
I believe it's A6.
A6.
A6. Where'd your pen go? Thank you. Okay, so what we see on A6, this is a collection of views of our acoustical model. And on the left-hand side, we're showing the resulting model of the HVAC sound emissions. And on the right-hand side, we have a selection of three cross-sections or views of the model. On the top right, we have a section traveling from the west to east. And then the middle image is an isometric view from the north side of the project. And then the bottom right is a view from the school property. So if I could just walk through what we're looking at here. On the left-hand side of the HVAC model, we see a lot of white shapes. Those are all solid buildings in our area. The focus being the C-shaped or U-shaped warehouse building proposed, and our property line is outlined in red. And then we see a variety of individual locations. So location A is the nearest residential receptor to the north. We have locations B and C, which are, if I'll show them here. So location A is right here to the north. This large gap in the middle here is Interstate 80. Locations B and C are across Interstate 80. Locations D, E, and F are all west of the site at the nearest residential receptors, the single family dwellings beyond the school proper. And then G, H, I, and J are all along the south here G, H, and I are all the south residential community. And lastly, J is the school. All of these receptors are placed at a second-story elevation, approximately 15 feet above grade. And that's going to be critical because that's a conservative view of how sound is going to be received at these locations. Okay, so the next thing I want to point out here is on our building, we see these blue pluses. These are the 8 rooftop units that I had previously discussed, and they're each modeled with their certain sound power level for equipment of that size. When you then look at how their sound emanates off-site, we get a variety of color contours, and those are shown in the bottom right corner of the left side here. This is our legend, and it shows what colors correspond to what sound pressure level. The nighttime noise code that we talked about at 50 is shown in gray, and then the daytime noise code that we talked about, 65, is shown in a red. So from this model, we see that there are no gray contours. In fact, at all of our surrounding properties, HVAC is going to contribute levels in the low to the upper 30s to the low 40s. So that's going to comply with the nighttime noise code limit by a considerable margin. The model doesn't include any parapets, again, to add a level of conservatism. And so we show clearly with this model that there are no issues with nighttime noise regarding the HVAC equipment per site. Well, we'll talk about it in more detail. You can see in light blue here, this is the proposed 15-foot sound barrier. If I can point your attention to the 3 different views on the right side. The top one here, you can see the model. You can see that the HVAC sources are activated. You can see that that's where the highest levels are, looking at levels of about 60 across the roof. But then as you fall off, the top right corner here shows the section and the dramatic grade that's present. So we have our 45-foot tall building, the truck court, which is subset slightly more. Then we have a retaining wall that drops down further, and then we have our school. And you can see that the school roof is essentially below the paved area of the truck court. The barrier is shown here, kind of in the middle of the section, and you can see then how the sound interacts with that as it falls off the site. In the middle of the right side here, we see an isometric view. Looking south, the school is on the right here, and our building is on the left. And the sound barrier is also shown in light blue here. In hindsight, it's very similar to the sky color here, so it makes it hard to see it from far, but it is shown in there. And then on the bottom right is the view from the school. This is an elevation of about 5 foot above grade, so ear height, and looking up at the building, and you could see in this green shade, this would be the retaining wall. The blue is the part of the sound wall, and then it shows the element of the building that would be visible. So just giving a clearer picture of the three-dimensional elements of the model. Okay.
And that exhibit is just today's date prepared by your
date, yeah.
office?
Yes, please. Okay.
On this particular model, the only noise you're presenting that's being mitigated is the noise from the air conditioning.
That is correct.
Exactly.
Yes. So it has nothing to do with the trucks at this point.
No, that's the star we're going to get to next.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, the next exhibit, which will be A7. And this is a pair of models showing what I have on the left side as truck position 1, which is a truck active in the northern part of the docks. And then on the right side is truck position 2, which is a truck active in the southern part of the docks. And so when we start to talk about what's the truck activity that we would expect here, and it becomes a very complex source to describe. So not only is it mobile, it's able to move around the site, but it's also very dynamic. We have a truck driving, which is going to produce a certain level. We also have a lot of intermittent events that might occur. So you'll have a backup alarm, you'll have air brake release, you'll have coupling to coupling potentially, which is the connection and disconnection of a trailer. And all that occurs, at random times throughout the period of the operation. And so as an acoustician, how is it best to try to capture that and to present it in order to exude the confidence that we will comply with the noise code? So what we opted to do, and this is what we do for all of our projects of this type, is we took a look at all the different elements that might occur on site. So a driving truck is essentially produces a maximum sound level of 74 dBA at 50 feet. In comparison, a standard passenger vehicle is more like 59, so substantially quieter. When we look at the various intermittent activities that might occur, backup alarms, coupling to coupling, air brakes, those end up focusing a little bit higher, being around 79 at 50 feet. And so what we have in our model here on A7, on both the left and right-hand side, is that 79 at 50 feet. So I'm trying to capture the worst of the worst for our evaluation. And if we can then design the site to comply, then I'm confident that everything underneath that is also going to come along for the ride. And so on the left-hand side, we look at the model. We see a lot of different colors now. The HVAC model was essentially boring. But here we see levels within the truck court approach those levels that I mentioned. They're in the blues and purples, so levels of 70 or greater in and around the truck. But then what we see, though, is the effect of the sound barrier, which is west of the building, dramatically reduces that sound as it tries to travel off-site. So we see that within the school, as well as beyond, we see a lot of gray contours, which again align with the 50 dB a night level. We see that to the north, that there is, because of the opening that is required not only to let trucks come in and out, but that it creates an acoustical alley, if you will, to the north. So locations B and C are able to see effectively line of sight into the truck court. Now, contrary to that, though, is they're substantially further away. And so the model shows that locations B and C, again, full compliance with the nighttime noise code. I also want to point out that those receptors to the north of the site, who are also beyond I-80, which has its own contribution of noise, but there is also for along most of it, there is a highway barrier that is not included in the model. So despite those folks on the north being able to effectively see in the site, that's something that isn't going to naturally occur. And in order to prevent that from occurring to the south, you can see that the barrier design is aligned so that it extends and curves around the southern part of it. And that's so that those residences to the south, which are closer, are also screened by that barrier. Just touching upon the school, when we were designing this site and the barrier, the residences, because they're inhabited at night and because of the nighttime noise code, those become the most stringent component of the design of the site. I acknowledge that the school is a sensitive receptor, but they're only active during the daytime hours, and so it is only the daytime limits that would apply and still keep them protective. But because we have to put a barrier here for the residential receptors, the school gets a tremendous amount of benefit from that, in that the barrier is in place across the daytime hours as well. So we see that location J, we end up with levels that approach the nighttime noise code at the school, regardless of whether it's daytime or nighttime periods. And again, these models are at any time the truck were to have an event in the location shown here. On the right-hand side, we move the truck to the southernmost dock, and we do the same thing. And then you can see then that less noise travels to the north, the locations B and C are reduced, but to our west and to our south, those receptors are still remain in compliance with the nighttime noise code, therefore showing that we could have activity anywhere within the dock truck court area and still have compliance with the noise code. Both models with truck activity also include HVAC, so we're having the cumulative effect of it. Although when you look at the low level of the HVAC, the truck events there's no true summation because of the difference in the magnitude. Just to speak briefly on some of the elements that I know we're going to get questions on, backup alarms have been brought up several times. So in our experience, over-the-road trucks have backup alarms in 3 different types, and we'll see them almost broken evenly into about a third, and a third. And so a third of the trucks have what everyone is very familiar with, which is your standard beeping backup alarm. It's if you look at the octave bands of that alarm, it's really focused around the 1,000 hertz octave band, and that's because that's where our ear hears best. So as OSHA has designed it to be appropriately alerting of people in the area to avoid any sort of accident, that's what they do. They do it best. It also has the side effect that is very annoying to us over large periods. A third of the trucks, over-the-road trucks, have what we would call a more modern backup alarm, and so that would it would be in some form of a broadband backup alarm. So instead of a beep having all that energy in a single frequency, it actually spills that energy out into the adjoining frequencies. And so instead of a beeper, it's more of a shusher, and it comes out in a little bit of as a duck quack, but it's a noise. The benefit of that is it's still alerting for anyone in the truck court area, but because it is in focus in one octave band, it blends in with the background sound level. The further away from the site it falls. And then as a subpart of that third, we also see, which would be more of the Cadillac of backup alarm technology, is the broadband alarm combined with ambient sensing capabilities. So the most modern backup alarms are able to evaluate what level is in the surrounding area. Is there another muffler idling 3 feet away, or am I the only one in the truck court? And then adjusting that alarm to be only as loud as it is. So we've come a long way from the brute force of it comes in one flavor to being in a variety. And then that remaining third is that we actually see that about a third of the trucks that are on the road today do not have a backup alarm. So the concept of having an array of beepers is not something that is actually seen in the current practice of warehouse use. Despite all that, and that's an interesting anecdote that I have, the model includes the beeping version, and so we want to account for the worst of the worst to be conservative here. The next thing to just touch upon, I think it might be nearing the end of my testimony, but why are we only modeling one truck? Obviously, there's going to be trucks coming and going all day and all night. Well, there's several reasons for this. One, and maybe I'm stealing some of my colleagues' thunder, but we're going to hear traffic testimony in a bit. And when we look at that collective document that both of us are basing our analyses on, is we see that a site of this size is going to command about 45 trucks a day, and that's over a 24-hour period. So if you were to try to distribute it evenly, if you wished, that works out to be 1.8 trucks per hour. But what you actually see though, and the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is where we're getting all this data from, they have a distribution, a 24-hour distribution of warehouse activity. And you see that the peak of activity occurs during the daytime. That's when the most trucks are coming in and coming out. And then at nighttime, those hours are spent filling trucks for the morning or for the next day, or you'll get a straggler here or there. So in reality, you don't have a distribution of evenly distributed across the 24-hour period, and so you might end up with a half dozen during the daytime period, say noon, and then that means that those have come from the nighttime hours. So at night, you might get one or two or none for most of the nighttime hours. So this is a small warehouse, despite how others might view it. But in terms of the variety of warehouses, this is quite small. Because it's small, it also has a low truck volume, and so the events that I'm showing here are not only intermittent, but are also going to be very low percentage of the time. Like if there are 2 trucks in an hour, this might be representative for the 30 seconds that truck comes off the road, parks in place, and then sets the truck off, releasing their air brakes and creating the release of air. So these seem to be more egregious than they are, but they are really just the best representation for this small, instantaneous moment in time and trying to capture it for evaluation to our maximum noise code limits. The other reason why we only see not only the low volume, but when you see trucks navigating a truck court, even if there are more than one who arrive on site at the same time, they are required to work well with each other. So one will stop and wait for a truck to finish its movement, and then the next one will work. So if we were able to press play on this as if it was a video reel, you would see that the source in question here turn off, and then somebody else would come in, and then 5 minutes later we might have something else, et cetera, et cetera. So you don't get that situation where we will have or expect to have 5 trucks here at the same exact time, all emitting their maximum sound level. And again, that's because the trucks in sources that we're just talking about are dynamic in nature, so they have a bell-shaped curve. There's a release or the activity. You're going to hit its maximum, which is what we're modeling here, and then those are going to fall back down to blend in with the background sound level. I think that pretty much touches upon my core testimony, and I guess I just want to wrap up and say that in conclusion, based on everything we've been able to show here with our model, the HPC, the intermittent truck activity, the site fully complies with all state and local regulations, and then given the magnitude of the volume of trucks and the number of times this is supposed to happen across the nighttime period, I don't envision a negative impact, and I don't envision there being complaints directed at the site. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, I want to start with Mr. Canjiano.
The wall material, is that a special material or is it a concrete wall?
Sure, let's talk about that. You're right, I did skip over that. So Mr. Miola had brought up an exhibit here, so I will bring this back. This is Exhibit A4, and we're going to focus on the top part that's showing the sound wall that's proposed. So this specific product is called EcoStone, and it is an acoustically rated product. So I would call it a sound wall, and it is made of a molded plastic material. It's a polyethylene or a sort. And so what you get is a dense core that also has a lighter weight. So the wall is about 3.5 pounds per square foot, and it's that mass, it's that density that gives it its acoustical properties. So we hear acoustical properties come in a couple different fashions. Sometimes you talk about noise being absorbed, but for sound barriers, what we want to talk about is the reduction of sound, or the capability of it going through. And so this product has an acoustical rating of STC 26, STC standing for Sound Transmission Class. And so all of those sound levels that we talked about and show within the truck court, they each have their own energy. And so a sound barrier or any product is going to perform at have capabilities of reducing those at different frequencies. Some barriers are better at high frequencies, some are better at low frequencies. With a wall of 3.5 feet, this is going to provide a dense enough material that it controls the low frequencies of our truck activity sufficiently. The next things, once we've established that we're reducing sound going through it, that then drives our other parameters. We want to then design the wall to be tall enough and long enough so that the sound going around it or over it tires out or is reduced in its quantity or magnitude, similar to how it passes through it. So while you could go with a heavier material, eventually that gets lost, because we could, if this was to be built out of concrete's like 50 pounds per square foot. That's great. That would reduce the transmission through the material, but the height and the length would then still govern how much noise is received at your receivers. So we have all this designed in a balanced fashion to try to make the most out of all of the configurations, right? We don't have it, it's not too tall, it's not too long, and it's also not made of material that is unnecessary or wasted in weight.
Okay. I don't know that particular material was called out on the plans. That is required. You have to, if you're using this and this was used for your calculations, it must be included on the plans, as any revisions you do.
That is certainly something we can do, yeah.
This is more of a structural question though, but this wall is situated, the sound wall, on top of, or right next to, virtually on top of a 15-foot retaining wall down below on the low side. From your knowledge, any issues with your foundation essentially would have to be, below the height of the retaining wall. You don't want this acting on your retaining wall below. Any issues that you can foresee? I know you're not the structural engineer, about these foundations that we're going to have to be significantly deep to withstand the wind.
Sure, but I can answer it based on experience with projects. The fact that we are here before you with this being the cohesive design means that we've already considered those effects. If it was a site that was built and then 5 years later we're coming back and trying to put a supplemental barrier on, then those calculations may not align in that way. But because we're here presenting a cohesive project, they are designed to work with each
Again,
other.
I'd like some cut sheets or some additional information on the plan showing the cross section, showing how the two walls interact from a stability standpoint.
Certainly.
Okay, that's my questions.
All right, now, Michael,
All right. I'm not concerned about the ambient noise from Route 80, or the ambient noise from Parsippany Road, or the ambient noise from the HVAC, or even the truck engines. Those will be handled by a sound barrier. I'm concerned about the 1,000 cycle backing up beep. That will reach the schools when the teacher's trying to make a point and she gets a beep, beep, beep. That will distract the kids, absolutely. And people sleeping at night, I saw your drawings. I guarantee you people are gonna hear that when they're sleeping, that beep, beep, beep business. Would you agree with me that if the building were turned around and the truck terminals faced Parsippany Road, nobody back there, the school or the residents, they wouldn't hear anything?
So I've been involved with the project in its current form, but I'm aware of the history there. And I think after looking at it for a while, I'm not confident that my answer would be yes. Obviously, with truck court operations being on the east side of the building, I would agree with that activity. But also being aware with warehouses and being involved in the design of from an acoustical aspect of dozens of them, I'm also aware that truck circulation is going to also be important. And so I'm quite sure what that plan showed.
You're the sound engineer, I'm talking about sound.
I'm discussing that, I am. So what I would envision though is, because trucks prefer to make a counterclockwise circulation, that even with the truck court on the east side of the project, we could potentially have seen a circulation path where trucks wanted to travel counterclockwise around the building. It potentially could have still warranted a sound barrier, hard to say. But the goal here for any configuration would be that we comply with the noise code, and that is indeed protective enough for the health, safety, and welfare.
We had another warehouse near Masterbrook, Jefferson Road, faced on Jefferson Road, and the residents in Mazdabrook were on the other side. And that sound engineer had a much clearer drawing than yours. And his drawing clearly showed that there was no sound on the back end of that building. All the sound was going forward from where the truck terminals were. And their drawings were very clear. The trucks, when they enter, they're going down a steep slope.
Mhm.
They're gonna be using air brakes, or they're gonna use their engine to brake the truck.
Based on my experience.
Both of which would produce a noise beyond your sound barrier, which the Governor Livingston residents would be very unhappy with. Those are the ones right next on that dirt road. They're gonna hear that every time a truck goes up and down. Whereas if the truck terminals are in the front, they wouldn't be going down that road, they'd be up at the top of the hill.
There's not really a question there, but I disagree with with elements of what you're stating. I don't find that the grade here is going to warrant engine brakes. They're going to be coming from a stop on Parsippany, and they're going to be turning, and then they have to travel 100 or so feet before they turn into the site. So engine brakes are used when a truck is at a higher speed.
The topography says that that's a 40-foot drop? What did you say?
35-foot drop.
A 35-foot drop.
Mhm.
35-foot drop, they'll be using their brakes.
I agreed to disagree. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Mr. Meth?
Just out of curiosity, I noticed it looks like you're predicting probably about 50 decibels at the East Lake School. I think one chart was 51, the other one was 50.
Correct. 50 for the northern truck road operations and 52 for southern, and
Okay.
that being the worst case.
Did you model it without a wall?
Yes.
How much of a difference does the wall make?
It would still comply with day code limits. I believe for the school specifically, we probably were about 10 dB higher in level.
Okay.
So instead of 52, it would be 62. So if we were before you with a site that we were confident was only going to operate during the daytime hours, I do not believe the sound barrier will be required in order to meet the noise code.
Okay, thank you.
Other members of the board have questions on this testimony at this time? All right, before I go to the public, Mr. Inglesino, you see the time. We're going to have some questions from the public. We'll go through those. This will probably be your last witness tonight.
Understood, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I'm just letting everybody know. All right, are there any members of the public who have questions of this witness on this testimony so that we can elicit more facts?
Hi, Julia Peterson, 25 Old Parsippany Road. What mitigation would you recommend for the properties to the north? Since there isn't any mitigation right now on that.
Who specifically are you referring to?
Pardon me?
What specific,
Okay, we're talking about this, which is a 140-year-old barn,
Mhm.
and this, which is a 300-year-old house.
Right, and we have a receptor there looking at for that.
Okay, I assume that the yellow means that more noise is impacting the funeral home and this, is that correct?
If you look at the legend, the more robust the
45
colors.
dBA.
Right, so
Okay.
it's substantially quieter, all the truck core activity is quieter, and also with the C-shaped design of the building.
Yeah, I understand about that. Okay, but if you were gonna recommend mitigation for here to cut that down, what would you do? What would you recommend?
Well, there's no mitigation that's warranted.
No, I'm not saying.
I'm
Yeah,
going to
okay.
form a complete thought. For any of this truck court operation, right? This is showing that we can operate
Okay.
anywhere within the truck court and that this receptor is not an issue. It was just brought up before, the discussion of trucks entering and exiting the site. This starts to become legally complex. right? We have a right-of-way, an easement, there needs to be able to allow for ingress and egress. But what I look at as an engineer is I'm also considering the fact that we have our roadway here.
Yeah.
So I'm balancing code and potential impact. And so for the folks to the west and the south, where there currently isn't a warehouse and dock activity, this is the focus, is to have a sound barrier here so that we maintain no negative impact here. For this receptor, I have to already acknowledge that they have heavy presence from Parsippany Boulevard, as well as something from 80. And so I'm confident that the driving of a truck in and out of here before they get to do their heavier lifting, so to speak, that there's going to be no negative impact from this.
Okay, now wait a minute, wait.
Also to recall the quantity, the volume that we're talking about
Yeah.
here.
Have you ever found that vibration or sound has an effect on old buildings?
Well, vibration is going to be the acoustical energy traveling through a structure. For that, we have been involved in that, but that is primarily like New York City proximities and heavy-duty construction, demolition, that kind of thing. I find that with truck activity, look at any vehicles, they all have rubber tires, and that provides significant isolation. So you don't see any transmission of vibration from these vehicles through the concrete or through the ground, affecting adjacent structures.
Demolition does create an effect that might affect.
It could potentially.
buildings.
So if you want to discuss the development of the site,
Yeah.
there are a couple factors here. So construction has to occur within the allowable regulation hours, and so the way they control noise from that type of activity is they say it can only be in the daytime from a certain time to a certain time, and that's the best tool available for municipalities to mitigate noise from construction. I'm not aware of, and I'm not the right expert for, of whether it needs to be any sort of substantial rock work or anything like that there. Anything like that has to happen, there are also strict protocols to follow. And so understanding that this is historic in nature, it's not my purview, but that should be taken into consideration, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Other members of the public wish to ask questions?
My name is Lori Cancellieri, 242 Pittman Road,
I'm sorry,
Lake Parsippany.
Can you pull the microphone closer and repeat your name?
Could you please restate your name and address, just closer to the microphone?
Lori Cancellieri, 242 Pittman Road in Lake Parsippany. Okay, I have a question. What about,
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
these trucks?
Just speak right into the microphone.
Brakes, like brake failure or brakes locking? What about out of control, trucks coming down that driveway? What about ice and snow buildup, ice slicks, snow buildup in the wintertime, with having to go in between that thing and the school? There's a lot of potential there for liability with all those trucks in different cases like that.
Well, so we're leaving my area, but,
Go ahead. I appreciate the question, but this is not respectfully, this is not the witness for that question.
This is just about sound engineering testimony. So if you have questions about the sound engineer's testimony today, noise, things like that, anything else would be a different witness, or for general comments.
What forum do I ask these questions in then?
So I'm not sure which witness could testify on the truck questions, but general comments will be at the end, and concerns.
And we'll have our traffic witness here at the next meeting, and I'm not sure whether this question would be for the traffic engineer or the civil engineer, but let's hear what the traffic engineer has to say, and we'll try to get that addressed.
When is that?
Whatever the board tells me. We haven't gotten there yet. They're gonna tell us shortly.
That witness will
It's
be,
not, it's not tonight?
it's not gonna be tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Homiak, come on up.
I don't have to state my name again, right?
Yes,
I do. Nicholas Homyak, 26 Oneida Avenue, Lake Hiawatha. Mrs. Peterson was up here. Was it a fact that the most vulnerable direction, or that the sound is not cushioned, would be toward the Benedict Livingston historic property? Was that the conclusion of you and hers?
I didn't quite follow your question. Can you rephrase it or state it again?
What is the most vulnerable direction that the barrier doesn't compensate for? What direction is the sound?
It's this northwest corridor that you could see in Exhibit A7 on the left-hand side, highlighted by locations B and C here.
And is that toward the historic trust property?
No, sir. It actually is west of that.
All right. The echo stone material that you're talking about, is it durable to the elements? Does it decompose? Is it toxic?
No to all the above.
You said it was some type of plastic.
Correct. It's a composite material.
And it doesn't have any toxicity to it? Is it durable to the elements? Can you give an example of where it was used and for how long already?
It's not a new product, and I don't have a specific place where you can go to today, but it's a nationwide available product, and it's been used at more sites than just this one.
And would it matter at all if there was no concrete and just the echo stone for a barrier? And does the concrete have any effect on amplifying the noise by bouncing off a wall?
So by concrete, are you referring to the retaining wall?
In the truck yard, when these trucks are beeping and braking around, the first sound wave would hit the concrete, right?
What do you mean by concrete?
The barrier is concrete with an echo.
The sound barrier, well, the sound barrier is not made of concrete. The retaining wall is, and then that's well below grade.
So the retaining wall has nothing to do with noise reduction?
No, it does not. That's for structural elements and to allow the site to step, as was described by the civil engineer.
All right, because I was under the impression that the barrier was on top of the wall.
Correct. And so as you go from east to west, the grading of the truck court is substantially higher than the west side of the sound wall, and so it drops down. And so the retaining wall, sound produced by the truck court is not incident on the retaining wall.
Do you have an MSDS available for this echo stone?
I'm sure we can find something like that for you.
Oh, for them?
Oh, well, yes.
All right, okay.
MSDS stands for Material Safety Data Sheet, discussing the chemicals or materials of construction.
All right.
Evening. My name is Joseph Palatini. I'm at 128 Memorial Road in Parsippany. So just a question, if I may approach?
Sure.
The, in your graph here, the chart, there's a sound barrier here now, which you...
On the north side of 80,
yeah.
Yes.
Which you don't account for.
Correct.
So that sound barrier was put in to reverberate 80 noise back toward 80. Now it's going to, how is that backside of that barrier going to affect this noise? Is it going to absorb or reflect?
It will reflect, but by not including it, we're showing that it's at such low magnitude that it's controlled without it. And the reflection back south is just going to take some of these sound waves that are incident on the north properties and send them back to the south. But there's no concern about them somehow amplifying other locations, because again, now they've traveled half the distance, and then the more sound travels, the more it tires out and the more energy it loses.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other members of the public have questions of this witness on this. You could come forward and identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Christine Espinosa, 131 Marmora. I just wanted to know if, I'm one of those residential homes there, and we do hear the trucks and the dray brakes and all that from 80 with the wall that they have currently there. Do you, with your expertise, do you think that these walls are more like modernized and they would be better with the sound barrier, or?
We don't model 80 in here, but if we could just envision it, it's in this empty swath here, even though it's the furthest thing from it. But this is where those trucks are traveling. So any of the Jake brakes that you're hearing now are coming from those vehicles that are traversing there. So our site really doesn't have, unless you were to the south here, our site really isn't going to do anything to change that. But I also can say that the number of trucks that we're talking about here are not going to do anything to exacerbate that existing situation that you're already experiencing.
Because I'm just wondering on like how they were just, they mentioned about the backup beeps and stuff. Like we're going to hear that a lot more than we do on 80 because we don't hear any of that. But I just wanted to know if the walls that you guys are going to put up, are they just, is it the EcoStone just a better material than what is currently as a sound barrier for 80?
Right. Okay. So I'm familiar with what general highway barriers are. And they're typically precast concrete. So this material is going to be lighter weight than that, but it's going to be just as effective as reducing the sound transmitted through the product.
So it's going to be similar. It's not going to be better. Because this is closer to us.
Sure.
Than
the sound barrier that's along 80 is designed to reduce sound transmitted to the north. And so for you to be to the west here, that really doesn't influence you at all. So this barrier, though, is going to substantially reduce the amount of noise that's contributed to the west here, which will affect you. We talked a little bit about when we talked about the material here. If we were to make this better or heavier, you would not see a profound return on that, and that's because the height of the barrier and then the length of it are also paths that the sound travels. And so until it'll follow the path of least resistance. So we can make the wall out of lead, but if it's only so high, that sound will love to go up and over it rather than try to get through it. So unless you treat some additional paths. But still here, what we're showing is that this is optimized to result in levels being sufficiently low. And let's touch upon audibility, since I know some of the board members have brought it up and you had just brought it up. I can't stand before you and say you'll never hear at the site. But what the code protects, though, is that we've reduced it to a magnitude that isn't going to be disruptive. It's not going to wake you up in the middle of the night. Audibility is going to depend on an individual's hearing sensitivity, and it's also going to highly depend on the ambient. And I understand that with I-80 being here, there's a heavy presence of sound at all hours of the day. At nighttime, it will diminish. But this is a terrific aid in preventing you from hearing a lot of entities from here. If this was not here, if I-80 was not there, the chances of audibility would be greater. Again, though, with the magnitude that we're showing here, it's not at a level that it will cause disruption.
I guess we'll find out. Thank you.
The loss of the vegetation in the trees, will that increase the noise factor?
No, absolutely not. And one thing that I glossed over, but my model doesn't include any vegetation. And that's because, to be conservative and also to align with reality, but landscaping doesn't provide any sort of substantial sound attenuation. We also want to acknowledge that in the winter, that any deciduous trees will lose their leaves. So unless you have a vegetative buffer that's hundreds of feet thick that you can't see through, we're not relying on any of that for attenuation.
In response to the lady's question, you said that the sound barrier on 80 was not designed to mitigate noise for that neighborhood to
For
the
that
west?
neighborhood, correct, yes.
What this sound wall is?
Yes.
Okay. Is that? Okay. Okay.
Any other members of the public have questions on this witness, this testimony at this time?
I just say we disagree with that. The wall on 80 definitely prevents the sound from coming to our neighborhood.
The two walls are two different things.
Maybe I'm just
Well, I'm aware of a wall along the north side of 80. Are you saying that there's also a wall on the south side of 80? Okay, then if that's the case, then I digress. Then the wall here is controlling 80 sound from traveling to the south as well. My focus, I guess, was on how we were getting to the north, and so I'm fully aware that there is a tall barrier on the north side of 80 here, but I did not pay much mind to one here.
Just to clarify, I believe the wall stops somewhere around this office building, so it doesn't carry all the way across. It stops at 287.
We need people to either come up and identify themselves to make these statements for the record.
Bill Semper, 157 Allentown Road, Lake Parsippany. The barrier stops at 287. It actually cuts the corner on the 287 off-ramp off of Route 80 and wraps completely around and continues down 287 south. There's no break in that wall. It's solid all the way around.
Okay, thank you.
Why are we discussing the 80 wall as if it has something to do with this construction and the noise that's going to be generated from this warehouse? I don't understand why we're mixing
It was
oranges
a
and
question
apples.
raised by another member of the public, and so we were going down that route of questioning.
But it was like, somehow it's going to be better.
Well,
that's the impression I got.
No, that was the question, was whether this wall would be better than the one that's already on I-80. So we were comparing and contrasting the purposes
All right. Okay, I
of
apologize.
those barriers and the material.
All right, any other questions of this witness and this testimony at this time? Hearing and seeing none, it's almost 10 o'clock exactly, which is usually our witching hour for new testimony. Nora, what dates do you have available for continuing this hearing?
Well, I'd like to discuss quickly with Mr. Inglesino, considering he has other applications coming up, and this one's going to need another full hearing.
Can we carry this to June 3rd, understanding that there's another large application for that evening, and then we can discuss what we're gonna do for June 3rd? And then if we have to further carry it, we can, but,
So you want June 3rd? Yeah,
yes, and then,
Not a huge application, but I don't know, it could be an hour and a half, I don't know.
I won't be here in June.
right, so let's carry it to, I would request that we.
Sounds like it's gonna be carried beyond that too, anyway.
Well, the point is that there's two applications on for June 3rd that are sizable at this point, right?
Well, just one, okay, you're talking about,
Sylvan.
yeah, we're never gonna get to this one. You wanna carry this to June 3rd?
Well, carry it to June 3rd, and then we can
Look at it from there.
we can decide, whether this one or Sylvan goes forward on June 3rd. I just don't know the answer to that question yet.
All right, we're gonna let you know here that this is your public notice, if this board so votes to carry it to June 3rd. Do I have a motion to carry it for June 3rd?
And Mr. Chairman, just to be clarified, I just want the record to be clear that the motion would be to carry this application to June 3rd with no further notice to the public for 7:30 PM right here in the municipal building, correct?
That's what I'm asking for a motion for.
Mr. Chairman, a motion as Mr. Inglesino just noted, for June 3rd at 7:30, was it?
Well, that's when the meeting begins. The actual time that we actually hear it will be another matter.
And with
Do I have-
required extensions.
With the-
Second, yeah.
Yes.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. To the public, this meeting, this application is being carried to June 3rd. We have other business that night. So there is no guarantee at all that we will get to this application that night. I'm going to suggest that you contact Nora, our clerk, to find out what the likelihood of getting to this application that night are, or if it's just going to be what we've done on occasion in the past, which is to have the applicant figure out what other dates are also reasonable for them to go to, so that what might happen on June 3rd is that we carry it to yet another date at that point. I'm sorry to make it difficult for you. It's also possible it's going to start at 10 o'clock at night because we have so many other things going on, but Nora usually doesn't let us do that.
No, I don't.
So there will be no further notice. If we don't get to it on the 3rd, we're going to do exactly the same thing, and that will also not require notice. So since all of you are very interested in what's going on, Ms. Jolie will be the primary source for your information as to what's going to go on. So if you contact her, she will know what's going on. So if we don't get to it on the 3rd, and you need to find out when it's been carried to going forward, she will have that information then. All right? Is there anything else that needs to come before this board tonight?
And the applicant's attorney consented to an extension of time for the board to act?
Correct.
Yes. Anything else that we need to have come before us tonight? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing and seeing none.